Here with a good friend of the Official Jets podcast, it's Charles Davis. How has this week been for you in Orlando?
It's been great. You know, I live in the area, so driving back and forth has been a lot easier than getting on a plane and being there. Although, if you're getting on a plane and going to an owner's meeting, you usually stand at a pretty nice place.
Yes.
Pretty nice location, good weather, the whole deal. So no one's ever going to be that upset if they have to cover it. But the rules changes that came out of it, so there's plenty of attention that kicked in. Obviously, this is different than going to a combine or a pre-draft deal, although that still hovers, right? Because all the coaches, they're here doing their thing, but at the same time, they're worried, okay, what are we doing with the draft? Free agency is essentially done.
Right.
You know, all those things that kick in. But the rule stuff is really what I think is coming out of this, is grabbing it all. Now we're going to have the modified kickoff. We're going to be able to have that replay assist that, hey, if something is egregiously wrong on roughing the passer and things of that nature, we can take it off, which I think fans are going to like. My only concern about doing what we're doing, and I'm glad we're doing it slowly in terms of that replay assist, is because, you know, Sky Judge immediately comes into play, right? Sky Judge, I've always said, and I still maintain it, is a wonderful idea and concept. But it's going to be a human being who's going to be the Sky Judge. You tell me over the course of 17 games, what you want is the Sky Judge never to be involved, because that means things are perking along. But let's say you go 2, 3, 4, 5 games and the Sky Judge isn't involved.
Right.
Human nature is, hey, I'm here. At some point, does that Sky Judge when they don't need to?
Yeah.
That's the only thing I worry about when we get there. But we're not there yet, so I'm just going to kick back and watch. But I do like the fact that, hey, if he didn't hit him in the head, take it off and let's keep it moving. The last thing I would say is, we're getting replay assist on other things already. I still think we can move faster. I don't know how you feel, but I watch games, I'm doing games and what have you, and you just see how long it takes to get in position to make the call. Let's move it.
Yeah.
No offense, and officials know I'm one of their biggest advocates.
Oh, yeah.
But I do think that they can move quicker on stuff like that to keep the pace of game going. I just don't understand why it takes so long to get in position to get the camera shot. No, you can go quicker.
Oh, I agree with that. So you mentioned the kickoff.
Yeah.
What do you think about the change? And what do you think this means for special team coordinators throughout the National Football League right now?
I'll start with your second part. It means that they continue to be employed at the level that we're employed already. That's the first part. Yeah. The second part is I'm excited about it for this reason. I hated the alternative. The alternative is we were edging towards taking the kickoff totally out of the game. I'm old school. I like the kickoff. I like the opportunity it presents. But where we were going, because of safety, the kickoff was rendered null and void. I understand. Kickers are too powerful, right? I don't know how you feel about it, but my theory on kickers is there's never been a time in our game when the athletes are as good now kicking the ball.
I agree.
They're flat-out athletes. This isn't the old
Jets
days.
just had a historic season from Greg Zuerlein. He was incredible.
Right? And I'll bet you Greg Zuerlein's testing in the weight room is good. I'll bet you if you went on a basketball court or on a rink and maybe he shoots, I don't know what other sports are, but I bet he's really good at them. Yeah. Okay? I don't know what he did in high school because I haven't looked, but typically when I do a game, I do a little dive on the kickers and the punters. And I always find that they're all state, and a lot of them are all state in position football, not just kicking. Or this guy was a striker in soccer and he scored 47 goals and he did that. Or he was, all-conference baseball player. Back when I was a kid, you ran over to your soccer team and said, can we have someone kick the ball for us on Friday night?
And they were the guys off to the side on the field.
And that was it. But now you're getting this whole deal. But I do like the fact that returners can get back in it. The special teams coaches can scheme. Is it going to look really weird? Yes. But the alternative is put the ball on the 25-yard line and we have modified 8th grade scrimmage. I hate that. I hate that.
I was just talking to Mike Garofolo about this. He said that some of the returners in the past, they could go stretch where you're actually going to have to look for a different returner. You got to hit it, right?
I think, and what I like about it is it was announced also while we're here that the Hall of Fame game is Houston versus Chicago because of who's going into the Hall of Fame, right? One of those people for Chicago is Devin Hester.
That's right.
Who's going into the Hall of Fame because of his ability to return to football. We were not going to get another Devin Hester at the rate we were going. If you're Cordero Patterson, your phone's probably ringing off the hook right now with this rule change.
Yeah.
That, hey, we can get you back in the game, and you're going to have a chance to actually return kicks.
Yeah.
That's a whole different deal. So
Yeah.
I can't wait to watch this. I'm excited about it. I never thought we'd get something from the XFL, the USFL, that'd be worth anything.
Really?
But we are.
Yeah.
This is what we're getting. Their ability to put that type of thing. I can't remember which league it was because I'll be honest, I didn't watch a single down.
Okay.
And I had no intention of watching a single down of XFL, USFL balls. Zero interest. All right? I've got enough football. Give it to me for real. If a guy was going to make it out of that league, okay, I'd be able to watch him when he made it.
Yeah.
I didn't care. But guess what? I know this rule was there,
Yep.
and this rule allows us now to keep the kickoff in the game. And I like the psychological aspect. I wait an entire week to start for a football game. I love the fact that the final explosion of it starting has been the kickoff.
Yeah.
You know, that anticipation, ball on the tee. You know what it's like. All of a sudden, you're at the edge of your seat. You're standing up in the stadium. Boom, ball hits foot, and off we go. We haven't had the second part for a long time, meaning someone catching it and bringing it out.
Yeah.
And the first contact of the game, and here we go.
Now we're going to
Now
have
we're going to have it again.
You know the draft so well.
I hope so.
You
I've got
do-
a lot of work to do. believe me.
The Jets.
Yeah.
After their free agency period, we've had our initial waves. They have 7 overall selections right now.
Yeah.
10th in the first round. What do you think this is shaping up
For
to
where
be?
they are?
Yeah. What is the picture for the Jets?
I think it's multiple places for them. I know Tyron Smith was signed.
Yep.
I know Morgan Moses was
Yep.
signed. But that doesn't mean that that's long-term.
Right.
So offensive tackle, there's going to be a plethora of guys at 10 that the Jets should have have pick of. If the Chargers at 5, and this is without trades, okay?
Yeah.
If the Chargers at 5 wanted to go tackle, it makes sense. If the Titans at 7 want to go tackle, it makes even more sense.
Mm-hmm.
The Jets could be in a position without any movement at all to get one of the top-rated tackles, and there are plenty of them in this draft. If you want to say, can I get a receiver? Oh, yes, you can.
Mm-hmm.
Because if this draft goes the way we're thinking, and now I'm going to bring a trade into it, we could go 1, 2, 3, 4 at the top.
Yes.
Minnesota, we know, is marshaled up for it.
Yep.
Las Vegas has made no bones about the idea they want to go up and get a quarterback. Okay, so let's go 1, 2, 3, 4 right out of the gate.
Mm-hmm.
So now those receivers have been pushed.
Yep.
The tackles have been pushed. Those are both prime spots for the Jets. And, oh, by the way, the best tight end in the draft.
Yeah.
Now, people have talked about, are we getting a return on investment for that guy? Okay, because Kyle Pitts.
He's a former Jets intern right there,
right?
Raheem Morris.
Hey, let me tell you something. Is he not one of the best
Yeah. Great man.
people ever?
Yeah. Outstanding, man.
I'm looking.
You
forward
never
to
know
watching
it's going to
him.
come by.
You never
here at the
know.
league meetings.
I'm looking forward to watch him do his thing. It's
Yeah.
going to be fun. But the return on investment on the tight end taken in the top 10 hasn't been what we've wanted
Right.
it to be. But this kid, Bowers, could he be that exceptional one? Heck, I'm thinking again, without trades, it starts at 5 for him. It starts at 5 with the Chargers. But he also could end up going in the 20s.
Yeah.
That's what it's like with this. Because to me, it's him and Chase at the tight end position. Okay,
Yeah.
no offense to the rest of the tight ends, but there's not even close
Right.
between Bowers and the rest of them, in my humble opinion. But tackles, plenty of them. Receivers, plenty of them. You know, if you want an edge guy, an edge rusher, you might want to go get him early because there aren't a ton of them in the first round,
Right.
in my opinion. Again, I'm looking at Letu out of UCLA,
Yes.
Verse out of Florida State, Dallas Turner out of Alabama. However people want to rank them. Consensus kind of feels like Turner 1, Letu 2, Verse 3, but everyone has their different opinion and flavor. If you want one, do you want to go get him at 10? You know, I mean, that's the question for different people.
You know,
Do
Robert
want-
Saleh never can have enough edge rushers.
Never have
but-
enough edge rushers.
But the fan base is ready for an offensive playmaker or
An
a
offensive
tackle.
playmaker.
Yeah.
It makes perfect sense.
Yeah.
And those guys could be there. And let's face it, if we do go back to, because I'm flipping between no trades and trade,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So stay with me, everyone.
No, we all.
Let's flip
But
back.
that's what Joe talked about yesterday. He's got flexibility.
Let's flip back to trade. Let's
Yeah.
go 1, 2, 3, 4 at quarterback.
Mm.
5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Tackles, receivers are going to get a lot of play in that time frame.
Yes.
Where do you land on who's sitting there? What if Rome Odunze is sitting there? What if Malik Neighbors is sitting there? Whoa, Marvin Harrison Jr. in an upset doesn't become the first receiver off the board, which can happen. People have different feelings about who they like. Wow. Okay, what about your tackles? Okay, we got Joe Alt, Olu Fashanu, right? Talise Fuaga.
Yeah.
Where are we going? And that's just the first chunk of guys that we're talking about as we sprinkle through the draft. And, let's say that let's play another game. 1, 2, 3 quarterbacks. Now the trading starts and what have you.
Yep.
No one decides to take quarterback there. The fourth quarterback doesn't come off the board. It's etched in stone that he comes off the board. So now we're pushing that down a little bit.
Yep.
Now what happens? Guess what? You're sitting there at 10, and that fourth hasn't come off the board yet. Someone gets itchy.
Yeah.
Can Joe Douglas make that move where, okay, I can drop a little bit, accumulate some more, and still get the type of player I want? Whoa. Now you're in something, right? I think Chicago is probably where that starts at 9 to me, because they're not giving away one. Okay. The card hasn't been written and engraved yet, but we're pretty sure it's going to be Caleb Williams, okay? I think the league is going to tell them, don't turn it in right away on the first night so we can have some time for TV.
Want some suspense?
Just a little time for TV, and then they'll give them the nod. You can turn it in.
Yeah.
But at 9, if you're Chicago and all of a sudden things have kind of flipped in the right direction, if you're Ryan Poles, hello?
Yes.
Hello?
Yeah.
I can move a little, accumulate more, and continue to get my team better. And they made a nice move in the last probably, were they 5-3 down the stretch? They feel good about themselves, and they need to continue to get better because now you're dealing with Detroit, you're dealing with Green Bay. And Minnesota didn't fall back as far as I thought they would last year. I thought they'd fall back farther. I give Kevin O'Connell a great deal of credit. He did a wonderful job.
Yeah, he's a good young coach.
Oh, he really is.
Safety is a position the Jets still are going to be.
Not at 10.
Not at 10, no. But
not at 10.
Probably day 3.
Yeah.
What can you tell us about this group overall?
I'm going to tell you a guy that many people thought we were going to be able to talk about day 3. And again, let's make sure we define day 3. It's rounds 4 through 7.
Yeah.
So a lot of times when you just talk, you say, he's a day 3 guy. It sounds like, oh, God, that's way down the line. Yeah. You know better. I'm just saying, fans, we're aware. Day 3 is not bad at all.
Yeah.
It's not. That's where your teams are made. This kid out of Utah, Cole Bishop, I'm crazy about him.
Are you?
And then when he ran 4.45 at the combine, I think some more people got crazy about him because I think people liked him a lot, but they weren't sure athletically what he would be. He comes from the same school as Eric Weddle, so I don't want to make that comparison, but you remember the doubts about Weddle coming out. People, that's one of the few I actually got right. and I think you can actually ask Eric Weddle because I did not realize, because a lot of times you don't think about who's listening to you, what have you, but he told me and actually put it out there that I always believed in him.
Yeah.
And I did. I loved Eric Weddle coming out, and you saw the career he had. Again, this kid isn't Eric Weddle, but coming out of Utah with some doubts, I just think he cleans up everything in front of him. He plays the game with intelligence. He's around the football where he's supposed to be. He was a prime candidate to be around round 4 and be there for you. The 4.45 might have pushed him a little. We'll just have to see when the run starts on those safeties.
That's a good tip. You always have those guys who aren't necessarily on everybody's radar. You talked about the top 3 receivers.
Yeah.
How good is this class?
Really?
And if you're the Jets, you picked up Mike Williams, you're going to take a slow approach with him so he's ready for week 1.
Yes.
We know he's a big-time vertical threat.
And a big, big body.
Yeah. Who the Jets are awfully excited about, as they should be. I think Garrett Wilson's probably one of the most excited people in the building. But they rounds 3 and beyond, do you like this wide receiver class?
I do. I've gotten to the point where I've said this, and I'm going to keep saying it. If we're going to keep playing ball the way we're playing it, okay, where 7-on-7 is our AAU basketball, because that's where we are now. If the kids in Texas wake up in the morning dreaming of throwing it and catching it as opposed to turning around and handing it and running the football like we did when I was a kid, okay, or pitching it in the wishbone, which we're not doing anymore, but that's all you did when you were a Texas kid. Look at all the Texas quarterbacks coming out now. Used to be Texas running backs.
Yeah, that's true.
Okay? It's Texas quarterbacks, it's Texas receivers. That's just one state. It's all across the country. Pitch and catch, pitch and catch. Everyone's doing it. Everyone's playing it. Kids are getting scholarship offers off of 7-on-7 without people even watching tape. to see if they can play with pads on. So this is where the game is gone. So as long as we're going to keep playing the game this way, I think you and I will have this conversation for as long as I'm lucky enough to be employed, right? That every year we're going to go, it's a pretty deep group of receivers.
Yeah.
Okay? Where are you going to place a guy like Malachi Corley from Western Kentucky? Okay? People are doing the Debo Samuels light thing because of the build and all. Maybe not quite as polished as Debo coming out, but that type of a body frame, not as strong, but still makes his living off of catching it short and turning it into something big.
Yeah.
Where does he end up going for something like that? It was a kid out of Holy Cross coming out who had a nice combine, and all of a sudden you find a kid at Holy Cross is going to be a pretty good receiver for us. That's what we're getting now. I think you're going to look up and see. Puka Nacua went in, the 5th round last year?
I think so.
Okay, so we're going to spend a lot of time on that. I would caution people to be careful with, you can get him in the 5th round. All right. Yes, you can. But Puka was a little bit more unique, for lack of a better word, and here's why. He was hurt every single year at BYU.
Yeah.
He went to the Senior Bowl and was the best player on the field the first day of the Senior Bowl. I think you were there, right? And then what happened? He got hurt. He didn't practice the rest of the week.
Yeah.
So durability concerns, things pushed him to the 5th. Talent, he was already in the 2nd.
Yeah.
I'm not saying he was a first rounder. Okay, I don't think he was going there. But I think he would have been 2nd, 3rd at the latest if he didn't have durability concerns. Kind of reminds me of Taysom Hill. Taysom Hill was hurt all the time at BYU.
Yeah.
When's the last time you heard Taysom Hill hurt in the NFL?
You don't.
It's the craziest thing, right?
How about
Puka went through the entire year like this, ready to go.
How about Leggett?
Yeah, now, did you see 4.3 something at the combine coming when he ran that?
I can't say.
I can't say that we did.
No.
All right?
No.
Maybe some people in South Carolina could, but we saw him at the Senior Bowl, and there's no way I would have told you he was going to run sub 4.4.
Yeah.
Okay? Big, strong, physical guy. Loved everything there. Remember, he's a one-year starter. Kind of reminds me a little bit of Kenyon Drake coming out of Alabama. Made his bones as a special teams guy, as a gunner, cover guy. Really 1 year of production as a runner. Went in the 3rd round.
Right.
This kid's very similar. All right, announced his, the old Nuke LaLoosh, announced his presence with authority in the season opener against North Carolina, where he caught 7 or 8 balls, well over 100 yards, and people were like, whoa, whoa, whoa.
Yeah.
That was like the first time he really got to play full time for them, and then he had a heck of a year with Spencer Rattler. I like him a lot. Another big frame guy. Again, since we do comps all the time, with that frame, that body, that's DK Metcalf light. You know what I mean? And I have to say light because it's the 1 year of production.
Yeah.
Metcalf, we knew his biggest concern was the injury factor coming out.
It's a nice comp.
But I mean, look at the body.
I know.
We were all in Mobile, right? We all went, whoa, when he walked by. He's one of those kids that did it, and in the tight end position, Theo Johnson's one of those kids at Penn State. When he walks by, you go, whoa. And I think he's a developing receiver.
Okay.
I think he got better the week of the Senior Bowl. I think that he opened up some eyes and became that guy. I remember Brenton Strange came out there last year. Was he 3rd round? I think to Jacksonville. Theo followed up. He's not just a blocker, folks. He can go out and catch it a little bit. But again, remember what I said in the beginning. It's Brock Bowers and Chase at the tight end position. Yes. Can you find good players? Certainly. Jake Ferguson proves that for you, right? Don't always have to have a stopwatch with tight ends. Mm-hmm. Find out if they have ways to get open, if they're elusive. If they have that production in college, I'm a big believer. I believe that.
Yep.
Because I like Jake Ferguson better than a lot of people just because they ran into the stopwatch. And I was like, that's not what his game's about. How's that worked out in Dallas? Okay. Real. Now, we'll do another show sometime. We'll go through all my misses, and that'll be the entire show.
Oh, you got more hits than misses.
I'd like to think that. Yeah. But I've got enough misses that I'm humble enough to know, hey, this is what I evaluated. This one I got right. This one I was way wrong on. Okay?
Yeah.
So that's what evaluation, that's what the scouting all does. But the good ones, the ones we see year in and year out that are drafting, those teams that make it work, their hit rate is much better.
Charles Davis, his hit rate is always up there. Not too many misses from this guy. Always fun catching up with you. Good luck to your volunteers.
Yes, in the round of 16. We're going to need it. Those Creighton Blue Jays are tough now.
New Pulse's own Charles Davis.
Go Huguenots.
We're down here at the league meetings in Orlando, Florida. Eric Allen joined by Sports Illustrated's Albert Breer. How many league meetings is this for you now in the spring?
I don't know.
Been a while.
The first one would have been for me, I think 2009. I didn't go my first few years covering the league. And then 2009, it was, believe it or not, it was in Los Angeles. It was at the St. Regis, I believe, in Monarch Beach, which is like all the way down in Dana Point.
Yep.
It was unbelievable. And I'll never forget, what I remember about that most was they were preparing for the lockout, which was still 2 years away. And Roger got up there and was saying how the economic realities of the league changed. And T.J. Simers, who'd been an old columnist at the L.A. Times, you probably remember the name, basically says to him, Roger, look around. And, like, the Pacific Ocean's behind him, and there's this unbelievable golf course. It's like, Roger, like, look behind you. Are we sure that you're having economic problems? So yeah, this would be
like 15, 16 then.
So this would have been 2009. I mean, yeah, something like that. This would be, yeah, somewhere in there.
How about you personally now after Peter King announces his retirement?
Yeah.
What has that been like, and how much of an influence did he have in terms of your career?
I've told people this, and I think it's almost like he doesn't get credit for how good he was before he did the Monday column. You know, I can remember a story that had an impact on me as a kid, and this is like a full circle thing for me with his last game. So, you know, I remember, I think I was in high school, and you know, I was the kid growing up, like a lot of us, like that ran into the mailbox every Thursday to get Sports Illustrated out. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Like, and so he had just unbelievable access to the Packers for an entire week, and this was like when they were at the top of the league with Brett Favre as the quarterback and all of that. And I remember reading that story and thinking it is so cool that this guy gets to be inside. And I wasn't even really thinking about. I wasn't even really thinking about doing this for a living yet, but it was just so cool to read, like, this guy got behind closed doors and, like, got to see everything. And so, like, you know, a few weeks ago at the Super Bowl, I think we all had a feeling this might be it for him. And a lot of us wound up, you know, he told some of us, and the fact that it stayed quiet for another couple of weeks after that's like a tribute to him, too. But, you know, like I had sort of done some groundwork to set up some access after the game with the Chiefs. And, you know, I was hoping to get Andy, and I've got a good relationship with Andy. And, you know, I saw Peter walk in, and Peter had kind of like had like a tough week, just, you know, like got a little sick and everything. And so Peter walked by me with Andy into the office. And I just like instinctively knew, like, I'm not going to push. Like, that's Peter's got this great relationship with him. And, you know, it hit me like, you know, that teenage kid I was reading that story, and the tight ends coach in that Packers team was Andy Reid. And so it was like one of those, like,
definitely
that's how you do the job. You know, like, that's how you do the job. It's like you build relationships and you find a way to get people to trust you, and you get access, and you don't burn them when they give you that access. And then you build and build and build, and people learn to trust you. And Peter was so good at that. And, you know, like when I came aboard in 2016 and left NFL Network, and he had sort of sold me on the idea that, you know, hey, you could, you know, eventually succeed me. And in a couple of years, I'm going to probably hand the column off to you if you do a good enough job, which, you know, is what wound up happening in 2018. It was almost surreal. And I can remember telling my agent to stop negotiating with NFL Network because I was like that opportunity to follow in his footsteps. Like, I just kind of had him up on this pedestal in my head, the same way I did Will McDonough. And I got to be like, that was like, to me, like the greatest thing I've accomplished is like the two guys I maybe looked up to most were Will McDonough and Peter King. And I wound up in both of their jobs. And, you know, like, so I felt the pressure every week of having to keep up with him. I thought, like, in 2018, like, oh yeah, you're going to ride off into the sunset. And then he winds up like winds up at NBC, and now instead of like succeeding him,
it's
now
like
succeeding
competition.
and I'm competing with him. But that was a great gift too, because, like, you know, the gift of competition, and I love competition. I've always been really competitive since I was a little kid, and the gift of that pressure and knowing I had to be on it every week. And like if I had a chance to get eyeballs on what I was doing, I had to clear this bar that he's setting possibly high. I mean, I don't know that I ever cleared that bar, but it made me so much better having to compete with him on a week-to-week basis. And after 6 years of doing the Monday thing, like staying up all night after games during the season and all of that, like I am in complete awe of what he's been able to carry into his 60s, and he's had the energy and the passion to do it. He's everything that's right about our business.
Yeah.
I think it's probably the easiest way to put it.
So very cool. Nice tribute right there. How much of that building is ongoing for you as we look around at what's happening here this week as far as the relationships are concerned?
I mean, it's an important – I mean, the Combine, the Senior Bowl, those are important weeks just as far as seeing people. And, I mean, I think it's the power FaceTime is really important. And I really kind of came to I always knew it, but I came to a realization of it during the pandemic where, I felt like to some degree I had an advantage over other people because I did have the Rolodex. And so when things did shut down, my access wasn't cut off. Like I didn't need to show up to a building to get a hold of somebody. Yeah. And I was like, this isn't so bad. Like this works for me. And then in the summer of 21, I went on my training camp trip, and I just remember like the feeling of being face-to-face with people again and interacting with people on that level again and being able to just, shoot with people again. Yeah. Sorry for my language, but like
no connectivity.
But like the ability to do that, like that was priceless.
Yeah.
And I think like as much as like this is as much as it's like a big event and they're going to pass the rules and all the coaches talk on the record, it's way more valuable to me to just be able to see everybody and to be able to and if there's somebody who's helped me with something like being able to thank them in person for it, like all that stuff is so important to what I do.
Yeah, there's no doubt about it. And I've always liked the league meetings because it's more of an intimate feel, and you do have that opportunity to go out and speak to people. Yeah. Maybe you don't have those opportunities during the regular season when we're just constantly running. Let me ask you this. Jets off season, we know their 2024 success is going to be tied to the health of Aaron Rodgers.
Yep.
What do you make of the way Joe Douglas has kind of attacked this spring to date?
Yeah, I think like where the Jets wanted to be was in a place where they'd have some flexibility with the 10th overall pick. In other words, like I think if you had asked me a month ago, they have to take a tackle. You know what I mean? Yeah. Like at 10, like no question about it. Mark it down. Whoever the best tackle is, they're taking them. End of story. Like A, that's not the best way to do business, and B, that's a tough spot to put a rookie in. And so I think, part of the idea here is how do you create a scenario where you can give yourself flexibility and you don't have to press a need. And if the player that lands at that position to your spot at 10, if you're not wild about them, you do have other options.
Yeah.
And so I think, what they did on the offensive line was massive. Like I think being able to get those three guys in for a base, like a base pay of $18 million collectively. Now, obviously, if they play well, it'll wind up being more than that. But to Trevor Morgan Moses, who you know, to sign John Simpson, who's coming from a program that obviously Joe Douglas knows that John Harbaugh program really well, and then to be able to go and get a Hall of Fame level player, although he's not maybe what he was, still a really good player in Tyron Smith. I think they've given themselves the flexibility now where, like, let's say Olu Fashanu and Joe Alt are gone at 10, and they really like Dallas Turner, and they feel like Dallas Turner can help them replace, what they're going to lose with Bryce Huff. Then they can do that, right? Or they think, okay, like maybe we want to add a receiver to the group, right? Like, and Mike Williams is another one that kind of helps give them some flexibility where they don't have to press the need opposite Garrett Wilson. Well, they could add. And they could, say like Roma Dunze falls to them. Well, there's the flexibility maybe to take a Roma Dunze. So I think they put themselves in a position where I don't think there's a spot where you say, yeah, they have to take care of that in the first or second round, which is where you want to be going into the draft.
I know a lot of people watching this and listening to this who are Jets fans
Yeah.
prefer the playmaker at this point.
Of course they do, because every fan does.
If one of those top three receivers are there, maybe
Yeah.
even a Brock Bowers, where do you stand? Because you just talked about the contracts framed up. Essentially, these are one-year deals for Tyron Smith and then Morgan Moses last year of his contract.
Right.
How would you weigh that?
I would definitely weigh it. I think it's something you certainly have to look at. And, not only are those guys on one-year contracts, they're also pretty old. You know, you're talking about guys who, it's hard to count on them for 2025, whether they're signed or not. So I think you absolutely have to get someone in the pipeline. What I'm saying is you don't have to do it in the first round if you don't necessarily want to. You could pick somebody developmental guy in the third round, whatever. Yep. And it's harder to find tackles outside of the first round than it is other positions.
Yep.
But I do think you have that flexibility where if it's a Bowers, if it's an Adunze, whoever it is that's available there at 10, you can pull the trigger on something like that. And find another way to address the tackle position or punt till next season on it. And again, find a developmental guy further down the road, I think would be part of that plan.
How do you go about picking your spots here when they do have an AFC coaches breakfast? It started, to just give it a little background, starts at 7:45 in the morning and goes to 8:15.
Well,
you have all the guys talking at the same time, and I'm asking you Jets questions, but you from a national perspective.
Sure. I figure everything that's said in there is going to be on the internet by noon.
Okay.
You know what I mean? There's not this great value for me in going in there and hey, I'm going to come out with X, Y, or Z. It just, all that stuff becomes news so quickly. Everything that's said in there becomes news so quickly. So I like to say hello to some people.
Yep.
And then to me, it's whoever the newsmaker is. Today I think it was Harbaugh. Going and seeing Jim Harbaugh and getting to see him, getting to see him talk about being back in the NFL and seeing his mannerisms and the excitement on his face. He looked fired up to be back here. You know what I mean? And obviously he's entertaining too, but it's a different guy than I remember when he was with the Niners. When he was with the Niners, he's way more reserved. You get him on the wrong day and it was really tough to crack. And now he just seems more relaxed, more open. And look, he, like everybody else in that room, is undefeated right now, so we'll see. You
Right.
know what I mean?
Yeah.
It was just the idea, just getting to see that, getting to see Mike Tomlin talk about Justin, looking for the mannerisms, the way that he's reacting to the questions, some of that. So I think you're sort of looking for. I at least am what value can I extract from this? And for me, the value isn't okay, I'm going to tweet out this or that. It's more if there's news to follow up on, or there's somebody who's going to be a newsmaker. It's getting in front of them and seeing them talk and seeing the way that, because you can tell the way people kind of talk about certain things, the way, again, their mannerisms, you can read into those sorts of things and file them away. So that's part of what I try to do.
Totally different landscape for the Jets this year, because last year at league meetings we were talking about, hey, what's going to happen with Aaron Rodgers? We know Aaron Rodgers is going to be back. Robert Saleh said today he's going to be on a mission, obviously coming back from that Achilles. Do you think that Robert is embracing being more out of the spotlight here this offseason? The spotlight always can return, but
I think the spotlight is going to return with the minute-to-minute coverage of his return from the Achilles, and so.
As soon as he's back,
I guarantee you there will be no lack of media at the first availability during OTAs to see how he's moving around and everything else. And it's not like it was. It's not going to be like it was last year. But I do think going through that probably helps. You know what I mean? And having gone through the scrutiny and understanding what that was last year and being ready for it this year and being able to get your players ready for it. I think that can serve a purpose. So yeah, I think Robert probably, and I think he's always been pretty blunt and open and hard on his sleeve type of guy. I'm not talking out of school when I say that. I think you can maybe see a little bit of a more of a acceptance of everything that's coming along with it.
And let's end here. How about the other guy who's partnered with Joe Douglas? He talked about his moves in free agency. He's openly acknowledged, hey, listen, we got to win. Both these guys have talked about we have to win. How do you go about your business if you're a GM, you're a football architect, where you're dealing with the 40-year-old quarterback? You know what that window is, but you also want to build in the long term as well.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I think that's the part that's interesting for Joe, and I think Joe's actually, again, like, they have to win, and he hasn't made the playoffs yet, and it's been a while, and I think everybody, Robert, Joe, all the guys know the score on that. But I do think, like, part of it is just hitting on your draft picks, and it's that simple. You know what I mean? Like, so when Aaron walks away, whether it's after this year, after next year, do you have a plan in place at quarterback? Do you have resources to go get one?
Yeah.
And then what does the core around the next quarterback look like, right? And that's where, again, like, that 10th pick becomes really important, right? So is it, okay, we have Olu Fashanu as our left tackle of the future, and now the core is Olu, Garrett Wilson, Quinnen Williams, Sauce Gardner, Brees Hall. I think you can actually, you start to talk your way through it, and you can see there are a lot of good pieces. Like Jermaine Johnson took a step last year. So I think that's the beauty of the spot the Jets are in. And what's interesting about it, too, is that, like, as you're offloading Rodgers' contract, you're probably going to be onboarding some more big contracts because, like, those guys are not going to be on rookie deals forever.
No.
And I think hitting on draft picks has given them the flexibility to build aggressively around Aaron. But it's just like when you have the quarterback on a rookie deal, that doesn't last forever. Garrett Wilson's eventually going to need to be paid. Sauce Gardner's eventually going to need to be paid. Jermaine Johnson, if he plays well, could be there too. And obviously Quinnen is there, So I think that's sort of the dynamic that you're looking at where it's going to shift in a year or two from quarterback-heavy model to you hope that young core is in place and supports whoever the next quarterback is.
Appreciate your time as always.
You got it.
We're now joined by Ian Rapoport of NFL Network, of course. What has been the reaction here at the annual league meetings to the new hip drop tagline rule?
I think here it's been really positive. Getting it out of the game. To me, it's more of sort of an obvious thing, right? I mean, it's a play that causes far more injuries than any other similar play. I mean, I watched Mark Andrews go down with a broken leg. I've seen Geno Smith on the sideline. Kenyon Drake was tweeting yesterday about how his career was forever altered by a hip drop tackle that broke his leg. I mean, to me, it's way more dangerous than almost any other tackle. And when you have a play that's so obviously not right, getting it out of the game to me makes sense. I see the defensive players on social media speaking out.
Yeah,
definitely get it. And their response is like, "What do you expect me to do?" And I think the NFL's response is not that, not something where you can so obviously injure a player. Plenty of other ways to tackle. I don't think it really takes away a defender's ability. Just hopefully will avoid a player's leg snapping in half, which I think is good.
That certainly would be good. Unanimous vote by the owners here down in Orlando, Florida.
Yeah.
NFC coaches breakfast just wrapped up. I went over to the Dallas Cowboys table to hear their coach, Mike McCarthy, address reporters. What did you think about the Jets' addition of Tyron Smith in free agency?
I mean, I think it has the possibility to be, kind of season-changing move, right? I mean, if you look, Tyron Smith, when healthy, is one of the best tackles in the NFL, top 3. I mean, he's a rock star and has been throughout his career. And, there were some years where he missed significant time with injury, and you're like, what's it going to be like when he comes back? And then you look at him on the field, and he's the same. He's exactly the same. Health is going to be a question. I think the Jets protected themselves with the contract, and you're going to have to manage him. He's not going to practice all the time. You're going to have to be okay with that. But he is really one of the, true experts at his craft. And you'll see, there will be games when you will basically not notice that he's on the field. That's what it's really like. And it hasn't been like that for a while for the Jets. Again, if healthy, I think it has a chance to be an unbelievably significant signing.
Potential future Hall of Famer, right?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, all decade, and it's like when you're deciding the Hall of Fame, and I don't do that, but I do follow it very closely, what you always think about is, did he have an era? was he the best tackle of his era? And like Tyron Smith had an era. I mean, he's all pro every year, Pro Bowl every year. I mean, that's again like the kind of guy you literally forget exists because you don't even think about him one time during the game.
We knew the Jets were going to address the offensive line free agency. That was emphasis number one for Joe Douglas. What do you think about that connection there with Baltimore? John Simpson, 26-year-old left guard who kind of restarted his career last year after starting off with the Raiders, and then he comes back and he trades for Morgan Moses, a former Jet.
So, there are plenty of ways to miss in free agency. We see it every year, right? It's like you take a guy who, you watch and you've studied, and you're like, all right, he's in this system. We're going to put him in our system, and we're going to go. And then sometimes with new coaches or new systems, it doesn't work. So familiarity is a great way to help free agent decisions work, right? So when you have people you know well, and obviously, Joe Douglas knows a lot of the people in Baltimore well, you have some system similarities, or let's just say a guy has played for the organization before, so you're not like, no one's wondering, like for Morgan Moses, like no one's wondering what kind of person Morgan Moses is. We know. That's how you do well in free agency, I think, is you get guys who you know well from places you trust, and you put them in to do exactly what they did the previous year.
And one thing that Robert Saleh talked about here in Orlando was the mindset is very important up front. And I think that people automatically think addressing the offensive line, you want to take care of Aaron Rodgers. We know that. But it seems like the Jets are going to be well-equipped to run the football with these additions and Brees Hall behind them.
I mean, it's the same, though, right? It's like great way to take care of a quarterback is to run the heck out of the ball and, like, force the defense to really defend it and force them to be tired. And, like, it's all complementary. I mean, I'm curious about Brees Hall anyway, because like what we saw last year was, at times I think he was amazing, but probably not 100% like himself. Like now with a full off season, no injuries, like he's probably going to be better, and he was already very good. So it's like if you can, rely on the running game, not kind of like use, but like really rely on it, then you really might have something. And I think historically, when you get older quarterbacks, look, Rodgers is going to make plays to win games. He is going to keep the offense running. He is going to be, I think, really, really good like he basically always has been. But historically, older quarterbacks have thrived by making plays when you need to, but really relying on the run game, right? I mean, we saw, Peyton Manning in Denver was, is an example that comes to mind. I mean, there's plenty of others, but that can really help. And, you talk about, like, keeping guys healthy, keeping Rodgers healthy, like, being able to run the heck out of the ball will help.
A good transition there to Mike Williams because the Jets brought up the timeline with Brees Hall in terms of Mike Williams, the former Charger, signs here, and he tore his ACL in Week 3 last year. You're going to have to take a slow approach, but they want him ready for Week 1, and if they could have a similar arc what we saw from Brees Hall last year, that would be huge.
Yeah, you're gonna like Mike Williams. Yeah, I mean, you're gonna like Mike Williams. It's just funny.
He was briefly in a building. It seems like a character.
Well, yeah, I mean, and the whole sandwich thing I thought was extremely funny. Like, I will generally roll my eyes at like sort of social media creations. Like, that was very organic and extremely funny.
You gonna shout out the Jets social team here, or what?
Yeah, I mean, I retweeted it. I thought it was. And it was funny for me, and I know this isn't what you asked, but, like, that day, I was doing something else where I wasn't, like, staring at my phone the whole day. And so, like, the Jets retweeted a sandwich, and I'm like, what's happening here? Like, obviously I missed something. I don't know what I missed, and I texted Gelfand. I'm like, what's happening here? Like, and so I, like, went back and read all. I'm like, oh, my God, this is so funny. And it was just like, and he played along great, and then went to the basketball game and had the sandwich. I thought it was very funny. But I'm just saying, like, on the field, you are going to like him because, and like Daniel Jeremiah and I are pretty close, and he does radio for the Chargers, and it's one of his favorite players. Tom Telesco, I know, the former general manager for the Chargers, now with the Raiders, one of his favorite players. I think the main reason is because, when you get important moments of the game, your quarterback is going to have to be under pressure and throw it up and let the receiver go make a catch. And he is awesome at just going up and catching it. Like on the sideline, deep routes, like big plays, like tough as anything. Like you are going to really, really like him. ACL wise, okay, you hope that this is a Jets team that is playing meaningful games in December and January. Obviously, you would like all the players playing at full speed when the season starts. If that's not reality, like, that's okay.
Yeah.
I think the main thing for Mike Williams is you have him when the games really matter.
How interesting now are the Jets at 10 in the first round? And you guys continue to talk about quarterbacks at the top of the draft.
Yeah.
And that's where the dominoes start falling. And then where are the Jets going to be? Like, their situation, do you ultimately think? Because you talked about addressing the offensive line, which we saw free agency, and then they get a receiver, a big X, in Mike Williams. Defensively, did some tinkering. That's going to be an elite unit. But do you like the options they now have?
Well, yeah. I mean, and I would say, like, talk about, like, quarterback, like, the Jets have done quarterback work. Like, do they take one in the first round? Like, I don't know who's going to be there. If a top guy they like a lot is there, like, and they could, I don't know, sit him for 2 years behind one of the greatest of all time, like, we know that can work. So if they have a quarterback they like, I would think it'd be great. And I think Rodgers would handle that different than he did early in his career. But even still, like, if the Jets take one and it turns out to be what Jordan Love is now in Green Bay, that's the biggest win you could have as an organization. They don't have to do what they did to get Rodgers. So I think, to me, if the right guy's there, that could be an option. They now, yes, they address tackle, but what if a great franchise tackle falls to them there? Like, could you take one, make him a swing tackle, play Tyron for a year, and then install him there? Like, yeah, you could. Like, that's how it works. That's literally what the Cowboys did in letting Tyron go, is they have Tyler Smith come play left tackle. Like, could you get a elite receiver, one of the top 3 guys who somehow falls to 10? Like, could. It's a really, really good spot.
Could you see that happening? One of the elite receivers?
Well, let's think about it. So let's assume
the top 3. That's what we're saying.
Right.
Yeah.
Let's assume that quarterbacks go 1, 2, 3, and maybe 4. Okay. So then you have 3 receivers. You have probably 2 tackles. You have at least 1 edge rusher, maybe more. Like, there's only so many picks. So someone is going to get there. And, I would say, could the Jets jump up a little bit for a guy they really like? Sure could. Could they, move back? And if someone is, like, dying to get one of those receivers, here's the sort of problem or issue, whatever you'd say, with having such a deep receiver draft, is you actually don't have to get one early, because you'll get what did the Jets pick in the second round?
Don't have a pick in the second round right now. They got 7 selections.
That's right.
So they'll come back in the third round.
So
So people are saying, like, to your point about flexibility and options, maybe go down if you
come back and get a second rounder. But let's say, I forgot they didn't have a second rounder, but because that was the Rodgers pick.
Yep.
Yeah. So let's say, which, I mean, annoying to not have a second rounder. Thank God it's not a first rounder. That was one of the best things Joe Douglas ever did, was keeping that first rounder. They will get a second-round talent receiver in the third round if that's where they go. So, like, they have plenty of options. I don't think they need one in the first round.
Yeah. You guys had a segment yesterday where TP, Tom Pelissero, was saying a lot of executives here wouldn't be surprised if Washington went in the direction of Michigan quarterback J.J. McCarthy.
I heard that. I wouldn't be surprised by anything, because the one thing I know draft-wise is that, you get to this point in the year and everyone sort of envisions where they think the draft is going to go. You say, all right, well, obviously Caleb's going 1, and then, it'll be Drake May or Jane Daniels at 2 or 3, and then McCarthy, probably goes 4. And you're like, well, and everyone sort of says that enough, and the mock drafts say that enough, that you think that's the way it's going to happen. But, like, if J.J. McCarthy's good enough to go 4, why would he not be good enough to go 2? If Jaden Daniels is good enough to go 3, why would he not be good enough to go 2? I have no idea. And that's sort of the draft is literally the best, But that's why it's so fun, is because truly nobody knows. And even if Washington liked McCarthy enough to take him at 2, they're not going to tell anyone until they get to be on the clock.
Right. I know you got to go do a live spot. I want to end here. Robert Saleh talked about being quiet around the Jets right now. Do you anticipate that picks up again as far as the lights being bright on this franchise once Aaron Rodgers returns again and he's there in the spring and in the summer?
I don't think it'll be like last year.
Okay.
I don't think it's going to be the wild expectations. I don't think it's going to, it's going to be a little more measured. Same success is still potentially out there, I think. But I don't think it's going to be like, I'll be at training camp again, I'm sure. I don't think it'll be the absolute pandemonium of like, oh my God, we got Rodgers, which is fine. Everyone will sort of settle in a little bit. The newness will be gone, and it'll just be like a regular good team, which is a great place to be. It's never going to be quiet because it's New York. So I heard Saleh say like, oh, under the radar. I'm like, nah, never going to be under the radar. But not like last year, which is a totally fine place to be.
Great seeing you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, man. Thanks for having me.